And as usual, the first thing that the Aryans hear is a crying
Dog.
dog.
Come here.
He knows. He
You little
actually
turd.
wasn't
He really does
making
though.
any noise until I turned the audio on.
He
It
sucks
was
so
amazing.
much.
Anyway, hello everyone. Welcome to the show. We are back. This is becoming a Tuesday show instead of a Monday show.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry.
Which
It's
is
my
fine.
schedule.
It's all good.
It's also going to be a Tuesday show next week, guys, because I have to go home for family things. So
it kind of worked out in a way because we had LEC today, so whatever. But we are gonna try to go ahead. We tried to reincorporate some stupid shit, aka non-league things. So
I'm very curious. I have no idea what's coming.
We'll get through those, but we're gonna like have a little bit more fun today, I think. But the first topic is, of course, does it matter? And this is going to be the topic on the minds of every NA fan. So if you're here for LEC, sorry. Does it matter that Fly and TL were in the finals and they're the only orgs in LCS that kept their NACL teams? Does it matter?
So I think it mattered to the teams in terms of talking to
not to anyone else.
Like does it matter in terms of like are teams suddenly going to reinvest in having a challenger org? Yes. I doubt it. Like I highly doubt it. This was a pretty
and they should hire me to run it. I'm kidding.
I mean, also that, but in general, I feel like it benefits everyone. But at the same time, obviously, it was the NA teams that voted to kill this rule, right? So I doubt that even with both teams that made it to the finals being the only two to not get rid of their challengers rosters, I doubt it'll matter in like the grand scheme of things. In terms of did it matter to each of these teams, I definitely think so. It is like not only in talking to people from these two teams, but like a lot of times what happens during the split is that, you know, someone is sick or something happens and you need like a substitution in your scrims. And one, like the easiest thing that you can do is if you have a challenger team, you just say, hey, you know, XYZ is sick. Can you bump up for a day, substitute in for scrims? Like, scrim substitutes, I think, happen a little bit more often than people think. Not super frequently, but like just out of necessity. Like for an example, I know 100 Thieves had to get a sub from another team when River was really, really sick during their week of scrims, going up against it was their first series that they played against C9. So yeah, I think that is one way it helps. I asked Empire in your chat yesterday. I was an analyst for FlyQuest, if people don't know, and formerly of EG. And he was basically like, yeah, we were constantly scrimming them, talking to Sven behind the scenes, because this is something we were just talking about off camera while he was on desk this weekend. He also was really adamant about like you can, like obviously it's probably not going to be as good as scrimming LCS teams. There are some like not like there are some examples of it being better practice, but most of the time technically it's worse practice. But it also allows you to try out a bunch of different things that you wouldn't be able to against other LCS teams. It really, really can help out a lot with prep. And so I don't think it's like a coincidence that this happened, despite the fact that obviously I did not pick TL to be in the finals. Like I was really surprised that they managed to get it together. And I think there are a lot of other factors involved in that. But I don't think it's a coincidence, because I do think that for each of these teams, having a challengers team does give you a lot of different prep avenues that a team without a challengers roster, just to, again, try stuff out, make substitutions if you have to, that kind of thing, is, I mean, it can actually be so valuable. But yeah, does it matter in the long run? No, I don't think. Sadly, I don't think NA orgs who have dumped their challengers rosters are going to bring them back. I wish they would, but they're not going to.
So I think a couple things, like just to add to your point, there's a very weird cursed story from last year, which was last summer. There was a situation where a team who were scrimming was not, like, their support was not able to be there, so they strongly preferred to have their analyst sub for scrims when normally it would be an academy player, right? And we even offered our academy player at the time to sub for them, but obviously they didn't want to do that. But it's like literally grab a random sub, and they wouldn't grab a random sub because they preferred to have someone internally. But it's like, if you're going to have a random sub who's someone internally, why would you just use your analyst? Why wouldn't you just, I don't know. It was just one of those where it definitely
That
makes
is
scrims more scuffed
cursed.
if you want to keep information like close to the vest, and you don't have a sub, right? It makes things very scuffed. The other element about it that's useful is, like, there were also multiple times where players were sick and you did have players sub in. Also, there's a lot of times where you sub players in just to give them experience. This was something that I was a big advocate for previously, is promotion based scrim time, just based on rewarding tier 2 players if they do well, by giving them scrim time. That helps. It also helps the players on the main team to have an experience of what is it like to play this scrim with a player missing from comms who would normally take over this role. Does it point out something that I am not thinking about that I should actively be thinking about? Because weirdly, my top laner is micromanaging when my roam timers are, and that should never happen, right? Things like that are, I think, end up like being very useful to players for improving. The other element that I think is underrated about this, though, is yes, it does matter, because the teams that kept their challengers rosters are the ones who value their challengers roster as a development pipeline. And those
Yeah.
were the teams that were able to kind of have players of a strong caliber starting for their team this split that are a bit younger, right? And we did see a good mix of like a lot of teams with newly promoted players doing well, like including 100 Thieves, right? Not necessarily just C9 and, or excuse me, not necessarily just FlyQuest and TL, but like players with teams with recently promoted players from Challengers League doing well, kind of by the injection of some sort of some energy whatsoever. This is something that I've talked a lot about on my co-stream, is when you look at teams like WE and teams like JDG, it is not necessarily true that Stay and Sheer are upgrades over players like Prince and Flandra, but it is true that if you have a rookie, sometimes it's easier to find a single direction of how to play the game because you don't have so many competing voices or so many competing ideas. And so sometimes it can be very easy to find like an easier sense of direction and a sense of energy or a different perspective. I think Whippo talks a lot about how Masu wants to play more aggro or something like this. Like, definitely newer players have different perspectives than players who are, I think in a lot of ways they've learned how to win like a certain way their entire careers, and so you have a new player without those types of perceptions or those types of biases, and then it's suddenly like, well, why do you do it this way? It's like, well, that's a good point, I have no idea. So there's like a lot of things that players who might just have like an innocent lack of understanding of the game, who might point things out. Like, there's a lot of maxims on coaching and teaching that's like, you need to have someone that you can teach to fully understand how to do something, right? And that's also 100% true, right? So there's like a lot of benefits to having younger players or less experienced players around you as a veteran. And then also, of course, like, if you have a challengers team and you kept your challengers team, you probably value your challengers team, right? As one, a source of saving money, which legitimately, this is something that I've said many times. Now more than ever, your challengers team is going to save you money. You should be pointing to orgs like Cloud9, who are spending a lot on their main roster and don't have a challengers team, because now the average salary of a challengers player is sub 2K a month. Very easy to have a cheap challengers team compared to the amount of money you're spending on your players, and the amount of return you'll get for promoting a challengers player is massive. So, I mean, from that perspective, like right now, there's insane amounts of value in having a challengers team. Do I think that more teams will bring in challengers teams? Like we decided we're going to destroy the entire league rather than downsizing it. So probably not. But we'll see what happens, because like we could have always had this mandate that the league goes full remote, right? We could have always had this mandate, but we never did. Instead, we just decided to let teams completely drop their teams, right? So that's another one of those things.
Yeah. And then to cap on it, I do think it is very interesting and entertaining. And like I said, I think it's obviously not just because they kept their challengers team that TL won. There are a lot of other factors in it. I think they were helped by a lot of things, and I think they improved in a lot of things. But I do find it very interesting and borderline ironic that the thing that brings them a title after their drought, after going like back to back to back to back, with these kind of super team oriented rosters, and that was always TL's MO, is the fact that they actually were able to promote players from their challengers team and then really help build around them. And I think Spawn success is really great, and I'm so happy for him. I think this is definitely a case where, like, obviously you have Core and Impact reuniting, and that's already going to be such a strong start because of how much they know about the game. But then I also think like having Spawn there with two players that he coached from TLA, having this team be such a macro oriented team in terms of practice and the way that they are practicing the game and the way that they're trying to look at the game. I think it is hopefully, again, a lesson that other teams will take. I said the same thing about NRG last year, and I've said similar things about the EG roster with Danny and JoJo, and I feel like we still haven't always seen teams move in that direction. But yeah, I wanted to call that out as well, because I think Spawn did a great job in his position.
And similarly, like and then as someone also Glaywith in the chat also pointed out, it's like similar to the MDK situation, like where you're able to have some initial success because you have a core of players that you've promoted from tier 2 with a coach that they already trust, which will let them kind of like catch up to speed very quickly. I think there's a lot to be said for if you're a coach coming in to an all veteran lineup with players you've never worked with before, it takes a longer time just to have like trust and automatic synergy and people just automatically knowing that everyone isn't stupid. Like, this is a dumb thing to say, but it's like, I feel like with so many teams with people who haven't worked with each other before, there's just always this expectation that your coach or one of your teammates is going to be stupid and not know something basic. And we as esports players and
That's
coaches
great.
never give each other the common decency and the common courtesy to say, yes, you're not stupid. I'm going to treat you like you're not stupid and that you understand this thing. We never do that. So there's always this period of time where it's like everyone mistrusts each other and then you have to like break the ice and do all those things. So the benefit of promoting people up and learning together as a unit is that you don't have to do that every split. So there's definitely something to do with that, especially if your challengers team and your LCS team interact a lot. You can bring up players like that so that they automatically fit into the type of team that you want to bring up, right? So that's a huge benefit of it, and that's why I think you have like teams able to promote players. And I think as more and more, especially in the context of North America, there are probably so many players in Challengers League that could just play LCS, but having your sort of pick of them, especially since there are so few teams that now have NACL teams, if you're TL, if you're Fly, you get your pick of challengers players, right? You get your pick of the next guys up. So there's a very obvious benefit to having that, right? Whereas if you're C9, maybe you will get your pick of the next generation's JoJo, but you'll have to pay a lot of money for the next generation's JoJo. Like you had to pay a certain amount of money for this generation's JoJo, right? So there's definitely like that trade-off, and you will for sure save money owning. If you're an org that spends like a couple $100,000 on players right now for salaries, you will for sure save money having a challengers team. Even if you only promote one player, you'll for sure save money. So, yeah. Do I think it's a coincidence? No, I don't think it's a coincidence. Do I think it matters? Yeah, I do think it matters. Do I think it's going to change the way orgs are approaching the dev scene? Probably not, but maybe you'll get more orgs like NRG who are willing to partner more proactively with challengers teams at no cost, right? Like NRG have a pretty sweet deal with Supernova. They don't have to spend any money. they get to kind of like talk to Supernova about what players they want. They get to like work with the players one-on-one, but they don't have to pay for their salaries, right? So that's like a pretty sweet deal too. So there's definitely situations like that that could arise over time. Anyway, fun. We wanted to do a quick follow-up on the VCS match fixing situation. Rapidly changing gears, because we did have a comment on the last episode, which was, surely it's not 2-2, 5 players on every team, and it was. So
yeah. I was so sad because like talking to people, they were like, it's not as bad as rumors suggest, because like I said last week, they basically dragged all the teams in, interviewed everyone, etc. The preliminary list was 32 players, and obviously not all of these players have been like confirmed match fixing. This is just the allegations are there, and now of this list of 32 we are investigating. VCS playoffs continue, with substitutes. SFM has come out of retirement, which I think is the big thing that everyone was I guess like weirdly excited about. He's going to be playing support, I think. But yeah, I want to follow up on that just because I feel like, given that it was this many people, I kind of expected them to just shut it down and somehow do something with that seed, or allow teams that are, I don't know, maybe no, because you couldn't see them in PCS, because PCS is too deep in their bracket. But yeah, I am sad that I was wrong, and it was way more widespread, which is just like really depressing. It's understandable in terms of like the salaries, the low salaries, and the situation, but it sucks. Like, it's really depressing.
Sorry, I'm just responding to a chat comment real quick because we moved on from the topic. But anyway, in terms of VCS, yeah, I think it'll be very interesting because this will be a very weird experiment, where it'll be interesting to see if like this is kind of like, if it would have been just better to send a team before the elimination or whatever, just to send like a sub roster, kind of like a la PCS or PSG did. What year was it where they went with like a sub jungle mid, and then just showed up?
Yeah, because they couldn't get visas in time.
It would have been interesting if they just like put
I forget what roster, but I remember what you're talking about. Yeah,
a bunch of players like almost by committee that weren't being investigated, and then just sent them to MSI. I would have been down for something like that. I don't know if it would have gone well, but this like alternative where there's like this tournament of a bunch of like the sub parade for lack of a better word. I'm curious to see if it's the better solution, just because there will be so many subs. But I think weirdly enough, more people in the global audience might be interested in watching the BCS playoffs now, which that's a little bit sad to say, but I don't know. It's definitely one of those like train wreck moments. I hope it's interesting. I hope we get some like really good games out of it, obviously, because I would watch the VCS games anyway for the playoffs at least. So I hope we get some interesting games out of it. SFM back and role swapping is just kind of normal, you know? Like I figured eventually SFM would get bored and like since he's a partial owner of a team, he would put himself back in the league anyway as like a for fun thing. Seems like an SFM thing to do.
True.
But you know, I mean, we'll see. It's gonna be a very interesting one. I think their coach tweeted like, "I had get the dream of coaching both Levi and SFM at the same time." You know, so that'll be a fun one.
Poor Levi's response is just like a sad face on Twitter after the list came out. I was like, "Oh, Levi, haven't tragic. You been through enough in your career?"
Yeah. But yeah, it'll be very interesting.
By the way, that's not saying Levi was not on the list, guys. Yeah, just to make it clear. Sorry, he was not at all on the list. It was more sad, like
very understandable.
Yeah, he was sad because his teammates and the league is like a shit show.
But anyway, it sparked a broader global conversation about match fixing to an extent. And then of course Rich popped off on Twitter. My issue with Rich popping off on Twitter is that there is no way Rich personally knows anything about LPL match fixing. So him popping off on Twitter about it is a little bit cringe. So that was like my issue with it. And of course now everyone is like memeing it, right? And there was a very strange situation that I want to address with during the OMG WE series, which was that the odds were fluctuating wildly between OMG and WE, so people started talking about it. And it was like, okay, there's no way that match fixing happening in China will affect odds on Western betting sites based on that information. Like, that's not how it works. It's going to be based on speculation, post draft, or like whatever the betting websites are setting. So to me, it was so strange that was even a conversation, but now it's like a rampant joke. So yeah, that's fun.
I think this is what like allegations of match fixing do, right? Yeah. Is like because going into that series, the thing that surprised me as someone who if people don't know, I know Veteran joked about it because it was me and one of the China Gap members.
It was also me, and it was a bunch of and Jamada. Like we all predicted 3-1 WE. Yeah.
All right. So yeah, because when you tweeted it, she tweeted out like the LPL caster thing, and like every single one of them went OMG. I think except for 957, who used to play for WE. So that might be a little like Homer moment for him. But I was shocked that it was that one-sided on the broadcast for OMG based on like actual gameplay I'd seen going into the series. And the weird thing that happens and like the really sad thing that happens whenever there is any sort of allegation of match fixing or whenever it's like already in your head, it becomes sometimes really awful to watch games because you're constantly watching like was that a misplay or was that blah blah blah, right? Like was that actually like was someone inting on purpose? And once it gets to that level, it's really sad. And so the fact that this is creeping in because it is I don't know. I didn't know about the odds moving, but I will say if there was match fixing, it would be much more likely that it would not be a whole game, right? Like it would be prop bets. Because prop bets are the easier thing. So like Dragon time, game time, which was one of the the VCS match that everyone was pointing to as like, this is match fixing, was a thing where they were like, maybe they're waffling around for like a certain game time. Whereas like pre match odds and fully throwing a match is a lot less likely. I just think this is such a good example of how poisonous this becomes.
Yep.
And it like makes me really sad, but on the other hand, I do think, to your point last week, if we are to get used to preventative measures and preventative investigations being in place, we need to get used to talking about this on a more regular basis, because only by talking about it can we, like, that actually, in my opinion, no, maybe people are going to call me an idiot, but like, in my opinion, becoming more used to talking about the potential and the possibility of this happening, once you get past that kind of poisonous part where it just pollutes everything, you can then get into like preventative measures, right? If you get used to hearing like, oh, we just randomly pulled this game just to see because we're trying to check stuff out and we're trying to keep things clean. I think if we're looking at like where we might want to shift forward, again, to your point last week, I think we just need to get so much more used to talking about it, and not talking about it as in every mention of it is an accusation, right? It's like when we mention it, it's like, okay, we're now going to investigate this, and that is a normal thing because we are constantly investigating our game to make sure it's being kept clean.
And there's now an issue. I mean, it's now like kind of a joke where if you type match fixing in my chat, you get like a censored emote of some kind because it's just like it's just a joke now. That's the problem. Where it's like, all right, okay, so we're just memeing it at this point. And I don't know if memeing it is like the best solution either, because it is definitely a serious issue, right? It is definitely something that happens in League of Legends. It is definitely something that that people talk about. And we talked about this last week as well, where it's like it does come up, right? Especially if you're in like a tier 2 or a tier 3. It is a topic of conversation because the amount of salary that you're making is not like gonna cover every single bill that you have, right? So there's definitely like, that's when people will talk about it. And also there's like less eyes on tier 2, less eyes on like the lower tier matches, things like that. So I think that's definitely, I don't know if memeing it is the solution either, because we don't want to like trivialize it. We do want to be proactive about it, and we do want to take it seriously, right? So it's definitely a thing where it's like, we don't want to turn everything into an accusation, but we do kind of want to make sure that we're treating this topic seriously. So yeah. Okay. Anyway, yeah, without getting into a huge thing, we just wanted to do a follow-up because we did talk a lot about it last week, and then the news came out, I think, like the next day. So yeah,
sad you just released the episode.
Just released the episode.
Mirq was like, haha, he was so on it.
Yeah,
I was like, yep, that was wrong.
It's actually Acel One Trick No, I think, was anyway, a viewer quoted the clip from the episode, which was very sad.
That's
who
it was. Yeah.
But anyway, thanks chat for holding us accountable. Anyway,
yes.
Continue. Well, I do want to talk a little bit before we get into like more serious gaming topics, which is Azir is back in most regions.
He is back in a big way.
Pretty much all regions, because LCS is over. So every region, Azir is back. I didn't look at the presence yet. Actually, that's probably a good statistic to look up right now. So what is the Azir presence on 14.6? I'm very curious. Globally.
Let's see.
Azir presence. He is been
83.3.
83.3% already on 14.6 globally. So this includes obviously LCK, LEC, CBLOL, CL, like LCK, CL, all these leagues. So not just the main tier 1 leagues. Interestingly, also 44.4% win rate. So very for me, I think this champ is like kind of a fraud champ in a way, because I think that being away from Azir has given us so many ways to play the game that Azir does not really mesh with, and that's like playing the mid lane volatile, using DMAT on level 6 timer to go run to side lane, controlling jungle very extensively. So I have some issues with like Azir. Instantly we're back to Azir because I think it took away a lot of the interesting ways to play the game and a lot of ways that were leading to a lot of success for a lot of teams. So I do think it makes sense that Azir is losing some games as well as winning some games, but I'm curious, what do you think about Azir? Because I've seen so many people on Twitter at this point saying, hot take, Azir should stay banned. I don't know if that's a hot take, if everyone has that opinion.
It's not a take. You're calling Cubby out specifically.
I'm calling Cubby out. Meteos made that tweet as well. It's actually insane.
I didn't see Will making it, but I did see Cubby, and me and Krogler were on that. We're like, bro.
Yeah, Meteos made that.
This is such a cold take.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think so. I agree in terms of, I think what Azir does is he provides a champion where you can fit him into a variety of different compositions. So like if you have that as, if we're talking about like, for example, taking this champ away from C9, which is something you and I talked about a lot in terms of what C9 was going to do in the Azir vacuum. Azir just allows you to do so many things. You can pivot a ton of drafts around him. He fits in a lot of different places. Currently, he has like multiple different ways you can kind of build him if you want. And I also think just generally the biggest thing with Azir from my perspective, and the reason why we consistently see him over other mids, is because like like I said, his kit allows you to do so many things, but B, unlike other champs where like you'd be like, well, you know, Talia fits into a variety of compositions, Orianna fits into a variety of compositions. I feel like those have a lot less volatile lane counters, whereas like a lot of things that counter Azir, like hard counter Azir, are going to be the only one that pro players have shown that they're like really, really willing to play. Outside of Corki is not included in this, because Corki I don't think is a counter as much as it is like a, I also have push in lane and poke. But something like Akali, that's pretty much the only like assassin
Yone.
champ. Yone, I guess. You see people playing Yone as well. Those are like the only two, right, that pro players are like even willing to try in a lot of pro games. And even then, more so with Yone and less so with Akali. And I think it's less about the champions themselves and more about comfort level of the players, is that the volatility of that lane can sometimes require like extra attention for you to play it a certain way. Those champs don't pivot in draft as much, even if, or you don't see them, you know, with drafts around them, they're a little bit more complex to build. So I think, not build in terms of itemization, in terms of fitting them in draft, sorry. And I think all of this leads to the fact that Azir is very stable, players are very used to playing him. And even with the current global win rate, I think you're still always going to see him be there as long as he is in any way viable. And I don't see a solution to that outside of like gutting him completely, because it's less about him necessarily, and it's even not about like what he can do, because I feel like it like goes back to something I remember talking to people about all the way in season 4, and Season 5, when Riot really made it abundantly clear that they want to do a lot more major changes to the game more frequently. And there was, at the time, this kind of fight between, I promise this is going somewhere,
Sure.
this kind of fight between, like, should the meta stay stable and we watch the best teams in the world continue to iterate on that meta, right? And really give them time to develop true counters to what we're seeing. But when you do that, obviously the player base itself is going to get bored. And Azir, for people that don't know, isn't particularly a great solo queue champ. Like, a lot of people run it down on Azir. It takes, in terms of like the skill ceiling, a bit able to get the most out of his kit, I think you have to be very good at the game, which is why suddenly he looks super stable in pro play. And I know the common counter to that is people are like, oh, Azir, like the common counter to Azir like fatigue is like, well, he's still fun, he's flashy, you get the scoop de whoop or whatever, the Shurima shuffle, whatever you want to call it, which is technically true. But I think one thing that I have learned since being someone on the side of, I want to see the game actually stay really stable and see what people can do with it in Season 4, to coming around to being more on the audience's side, where people just kind of get sick of watching the same thing over and over again, is that I still think the game itself now changes too much by design for people not to get fatigue when they're seeing the same champion over and over again. Hopefully that rant made sense, because like, yeah, I think one of the things that makes Azir stick out is because he's been so good for so long, and we keep seeing him in pro play regardless of region. So I think if this happens with any champ that is picked a lot and people get sick of.
So my take is actually that there are a lot of champs right now that are really good into Azir. And I think that Azir is a phase. And I think that people are happy to play Azir again because he is a stable champ and he does provide so many different things. But there are a lot of champs right now that are really good into Azir. And we're going to see them slowly phase Azir out naturally without him being nerfed. That is my current take.
I hope so.
Because I think Tristana is giga OP at the moment with like the thing that Freak said in response to people asking about the 14-6 crit item buffs was that crit, statistically speaking, was fine in the game state, right? If you look at the solo queue data, if you look at the comp data, if you look at all that information, crit builds were statistically fine. But you still had so many ADCs complaining about how it felt to play them. So they buffed them slightly because you still want the game to feel good, right? In a way. And he said it more eloquently than this, so just watch his patch notes. But the point is that basically now they're OP. It is my feeling, right? Like the crit is OP, and that was part of why YWE was succeeding with like the double AD comps, like the double Navori ADC comps, things like that. You have like 5 extra AD to the Navori. The build is also more comfortable, and then you have like 40% to 50% crit bonus on IE, etc. So like these things I think were not needed changes, and now like crit feels, I think, in my opinion, a lot stronger. So you can go like Triss mid. Talia is a natural counter to Azir. You are competitive in terms of wave clear, and you have way more impact on the map, and can do more skirmishes. Azir can also like not get an easy shuffle versus you, can't move versus you because of your Unraveled Earth, which is like the most obnoxious ability in the game, followed by how big the hitbox is on the Talia knockup. Yes, I rant about this a lot, but the point, like, Talia's disgusting champ. I think Ahri is fine to play into Azir, and Ahri you get like the DMAT plus like the triple tonic. You run around the map, you kill people, whatever. I think that there's like a lot of champions that work very well into Azir at the moment, and I think Azir will get phased out somewhat naturally, and we're already seeing it. Like, for me, the big thing is seeing what the win rates are in LCK at the moment, right? At the moment in LCK, it's 43%, because I think, based on data and based on like observing how people play Azir and LCK in different regions over time, LCK Azir's play very aggressively in lane. They usually play the lane way more volatile than a lot of other regions. They do the HP trades so that they try to make the enemy mid laner as useless as you. So the fact that Azir it has a low win rate in LCK indicates to me that you're not getting as much out of the landing phase as you potentially could long term. And so these champions that are good into Azir are going to rise up more. Like in the WE NIP series today, in order for like there were so many mid bans. There was Ari bans, there was Talia bans, there was Triss bans, there was Yone was played. You ended up with Asol. Asol, by the way, like don't get me started on Asol versus Azir. So like I think there's just so much diversity in the mid pool, and Azir doesn't offer as much to people as people think he does at this point. I think there's like more OP mids at the moment that offer just as many great things, and so my take is that Azir will get phased out of as much high presence as he currently has. So that's my current take on it. But in honor of Azir's return, I did want to play a game that I liked.
I'm terrified
to call, and I think I might have to share screen with you. The easiest way to do it might be to share screen, or you could just react to the
I'll pull up stream
to the stream. Is basically
hopefully ads don't take too long to get through.
Fake champ or real champ. And in addition to fake champ or real champ, I also added this caveat: what role should it go in? Because most of these, I think, go into multiple roles. So, yeah, this is hopefully this is a more fun game than it seems. Anyway, first one. Any thoughts?
I'm waiting for it to come up.
Okay, we're on. Oh yeah,
we'll have to see the delay on this.
I think it's a 10-second delay because I had to adjust the delay for the LBL clean feed. So I might be better.
There we go. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Real or fake? So I think real, as long as you're not expecting her to do damage.
So you want the tank build?
Huh?
So you want the tank build? Okay.
Well, because that's pretty much what people are playing. But like whenever you get to a tank build like this, in terms of like the idea of it, if you are going to do damage, you need to be an actual champ optimized to do a ton of damage, which Rek'Sai is not currently. Like the way that people initially thought she was going to work reminded me of how people wanted to play like Fizz. Do you remember Cinderhulk Fizz? Of course you do. Cinderhulk Fizz is disgusting. And the idea behind that is that he is tanky enough to continuously be doing damage, right? So the damage loss you get from building tank item is mitigated by the fact that you stay alive for much, much longer and are doing consistent damage. Similarly, I think the idea behind the tank Azir was very similar, where like instead of building more towards damage and poking from range, you survive a lot longer, and the building tank items is again mitigated by the fact that you are just there constantly pumping out damage. Rek'Sai is not that. So initially when people are playing her, they were definitely expecting her to like do a lot of damage or do more damage than she did. Like I remember there was and G2 still won this game, but in one of the first games where I saw her played in LEC, Broken Blade, like he gets the sick knockup, right? And he's like constantly going in and out, and he is just not taking damage, and then eventually he gets the sustain like and like heals everything he just took. So like he's so difficult to kill, but no one around him is taking damage, and the damage dealers from his team hadn't arrived yet. So it's just a very funny to watch. I forget who they were playing. It was not this past week. It was like either last week or 2 weeks ago. But since then, I've seen some really good compositions that Tank Rek'Sai has been in. and I've seen some really atrocious ones where it's pretty obvious that they're kind of expecting her to do a lot more damage than she does. So I would say, like, depends on composition, whether she's real or fake.
I would say she's real all the time as long as you're not building Stridebreaker. Please feel love of God, stop building that item. Also, she's the top laner now. Thank you. Anyway,
Yep.
good times. All right.
Wayward, my hero.
All right. This is
True.
okay, we'll do like a slightly less fun one. That's also I'm screen sharing now. You can see.
Oh, nice.
So maybe there will be less delay.
Ooh. I want to be real. I think Cog can be real.
Yeah.
Like, I actually am kind of surprised that I haven't seen more teams try him out, especially in LPL, who previously were Cog enjoyers, and then also from G2, who I think have played Cog comps really well in the past. I feel like it just takes one Cog pop off for people to consider it, and I'd heard rumblings of Cog getting played in some scrims, but never saw it on stage. But I think Cog is real. I actually wish teams would take the risk.
I feel like he's less real now that we're going back to crate.
Yeah.
I feel like he was like Loki okay in the Varus, like lethal tempo Varus. Like I think one of the bigger problems is that you wouldn't know if it was like poke Varus or lethal tempo Varus until you got into games. I also think, but like level 1, you could just run at people. It's very similar to Twitch in the sense that you can just run at people level 1 and beat the shit out of them. I think you could still play it in Deseri as an option. I think that there is like still angles where you can play it. So I'm very curious to see more of it. But it was played in LCK, so I know in the promotion tournament, Shogo will play it probably. So good, fun days. All right, let's get some more in here. I probably won't do like a ton, but I do want to get at least a couple fun ones. All right.
Ooh.
Where does this one go, and is it real?
I mean, definitely more support now.
Well, people are playing at support. Should it go support though?
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually like Bloodsong. I actually like Bloodsong Camille a lot. In terms of is it real though? That's tough. Even when I've seen success with it, it definitely feels like, depending on bans, you probably could have picked something different. Sometimes, like, for example, I'd say situationally, I like Rumble better as a support than Camille. Obviously, they do really different things, but like if we're talking about, I don't know, supports are getting bored down there and they want to play something different, which I feel like sometimes happens. I'm going to err on the side of not real. I don't actually think she's like that strong, but I think she's very fun to play. And I do think she's a support now and not a top laner.
So I think she's still good in top. And I think a lot of the reason why I think she's good in top, maybe not when Renekton's picked, but like when people are blinding Cassandra, I was like, why don't people pick more Camille? And I think part of the reason why is that they actually reduced the cooldown on her passive. I thought that was very disgusting. So people are talking about like as Iconcast points out, like they talked about the wall changes in top lane, but for me, like there's a lot of stuff that compensated for that. Mostly cooldown reductions, and your Q trades are still like very disgusting in my opinion, even without the stuns. Especially if you're like blinding these types of melee traps. I think she's absolutely fraudulent as a support. And I'm very tired of seeing this champ. I'm very tired of seeing DOS and Iwandi not negative gaming and not get competitive rulings for not negative gaming with Camille supports. Very interestingly, I don't know if you saw the Twitter controversy. CU Boulder support Heloisia got a temporary ban on her account for playing Camille support and having 14 and 15 deaths.
I saw that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I messaged her and
At first I was like, what happened? Because she was not someone who I would have ever suspected of like inting intentionally.
And I messaged her and I was like, I can't believe Das and Iwandi get paid to do this, and you get you get account ban. Anyway, it's just completely unfair. So, she's unbanned now, so that's a good thing. But
so we both think she's a fraudulent support.
I think she's a completely fraudulent support. I was talking to someone this week about like, and I won't say who, but this week they were saying, I think there are niche situations where she can work. I said, yeah, if you think your enemy bot lane's gold, yeah, probably can work in that situation. But for me, like,
oh god,
it's like,
why'd you have to bring up the DOS game? That was that was tough, man. That was tough to watch.
Oh man, I'm never gonna get over the facial expression Prince had in that game when he knew Iwandi was gonna pick Camille. It was like,
just like, please don't do this to me, bro.
God, why? Into Ash Varus as well. I was like, that's insane, man. But it's like, it's for sure. I get why they're doing it, but it's one of those picks where it's like, it's 2024. How are we this disconnected from the difference between like a scrim / solo queue pick and like a stage pick? Like, how are we this disconnected? You know, obviously it works in scrims and stage, but in scrims and solo queue, but it's not like there's no way you can convince me that this is a real like stage pick. So
yeah.
Yeah, I also like Taiwanese Jonatech into Rakan. I did not like that you're picking it with Zeri 1-2 with only Rakan showing. That was terrible. Anyway.
That's fun.
We'll do one more and then we'll move on so that this doesn't get stale. So here we go, one more.
Ooh, Aurelion Sol is super fucking real. Yeah. I actually think he is broken, like absolutely broken. Like when initially when it was pretty much not solely APA playing it earlier in LCS playoffs, but like I was like, this champ kind of fucks. Like even in, were we still on 14-4? I think we were already on 14-5 when he played it in like one of the final weeks.
Yep. With
the Smolder Asol comp. And yeah, like obviously people, whenever APA plays it, they're gonna be like, haha, Asol, Ziggs, those are the only two things you can play, lol. But Asol is fucking broken. Hopefully now that other teams in, for example, LCK, LPL, G2 just played it. Yesterday.
Yesterday they also played it. I forget, someone in LEC played it today as well. It was first game in the SK series. Yeah.
No, Asol is fucking broken. I think he's super strong, incredibly real champ.
It's actually crazy to me that, so the argument is right that like people have always said this, that tier 2 and tier 3 in NA always play champ, are always like way ahead of tier 1 on the meta, and Asol is just like rampant in OQs right now, like tier 3 NA. Like it's absolutely everywhere. It's like 80+% like presence in the recent weeks, right? So like they're playing it. LPL, it just started randomly getting banned like towards in the last couple weeks of regular season. So it's like, we know it was broken, and I wanted to put it in here because I swear, like LCS pros, you talk to them and they still say this champ is stupid, right? Like this champ's not worth playing, right? So
that's I think it's the APA effect.
So, yeah,
I think
it's kind of crazy.
I think who said it in chat? Matt Scoot too. Yeah, I actually do agree. Like I think Asol is broken, and people just don't think it because they don't respect APA, and it's one of his like one tricks.
Yeah. And the wave crew is also very good. I mentioned it like as a potential pick versus Azir as well, because like Azir hates playing against long range. So that's another reason why I think Azir is having trouble right now, because Like, you have long range poke from Talia, you have long range from Aesol, you have long range from Jinx. Like, you have poke Varus, like all these champs that are good. Like, you can even play Cog into it. That's another reason why I'd add the Kog'Maw slide. Because I was wondering if you would give the like AP mid Cog call out. But yeah. Though the real talk though, Aesol should be played top. Like my boy Sunshine in NA solo queue plays Aesol top.
Really?
I'm joking. It shouldn't be played top, but it can.
I was
be
gonna
played
say
top.
I wouldn't.
I
I wouldn't think it was. He would have a lot of good matchups, but
unironically, I do
as
think
like
an
R as like an
or
R5
Smolder top. Unironically,
R5 counter pick into what?
Almost into like many things. I think maybe not like because almost all melee bruisers will probably have a hard time against it.
Yeah, that's true.
So, and I think people don't play mages top because they don't know how to play mages. But I think mages are safer top than they have ever been because of the long lane.
Because of the lane changes.
Yeah, so I don't know. Like it's a bit of a joke, but also my boy Sunshine Rex kids on Aesol top. So shout out Sunshine. Anyway. He's not my boy. He was just in the combine that I ran, and it was very funny to watch him pull out the Aesol top and like win every game with it. It was a legend.
That's amazing.
It was legendary. Yes. Yeah, Aesol. Yeah, Caps used to play Aesol. There's like a lot of Aesol players historically. But yeah, I have been a proponent of Mage's top for a while too. And Smolder top, but we knew that already. So that's probably it for the game because I don't want to get too stale. Add a couple other ones, but I think we could probably move on.
We should play this again in different.
It's a fun one
during MSI when someone pulls out something truly insane.
Yeah, when people are playing scrim champs on stage as usual. All right, but we do have another game, very quick, and it's more of a gimmick than a game, which is Emily's...
I have no idea what is coming.
Fashion Corner. I'm going to have Emily react to recent fashion trends, okay? So I'm going to use the same screen here, so you can pull it up. Emily's Fashion Corner. So I need your comment on... Okay, that's obviously not it. This. Thoughts?
All right. Let's see.
The latest fashion trend apparently is short shorts. Short shorts are apparently all the rage currently. What is your take on short shorts trend running over the global fashion, I don't know, something? This is from Vogue.
I mean, I like them. They're comfortable. In terms of, is this new though? Because I remember like as recently as 5 years ago. I guess it depends on how short they are.
Because like article, and you know everything that's like, popular 5 years ago is popular now again, so it's all good. Yeah.
2 of these are like bikini briefs almost, which I'd be a little concerned to wear out in public, and have people take me seriously. But I know like what was really trendy for a little while was like really short like bike shorts almost, and then like it was like a athleisure on the bottom, business jacket on the top. In terms of a silhouette, I think it's kind of cool because it shows off people's legs, and I don't know, that's a cool look.
Today I learned Emily is a legs person.
As someone who like wears short skirts to make myself look taller.
Oh, okay. The tech, we've got the talk.
This is the tech, right?
I thought you just stood on Apple boxes.
Sometimes I do that too. I also wear like 4 to 5 inch heels. I try my best, guys. It was actually funny because Sven was like, I feel badly that I'm looking over you to look at chat because like I know you and I have both had the interviews with Sven where we're like holding the microphone up and it is actually a comical angle. Because he's like 7 feet tall.
One of my very first in-person interviews at Worlds 2015 was Sven. And it was legit, like, I had to...
Amazing.
I was literally, like, oh my gosh, what's the Statue of Liberty? I was legit the Statue of Liberty interviewing him with, like, the fucking microphone. God
yeah,
bless.
he kept saying, like, he's like, I feel so bad because I feel like I'm just looking over you. So he was like having to make like whenever he was answering me, he was having to make an effort to look at me directly because he would literally have to be looking down because I wasn't on an Apple box. I should have just grabbed one. I'm not ashamed of having to use
the Apple box.
Having to use Apple box. Yeah, he felt bad too because he was like, I don't mean to be like talking over you.
I'm not ashamed of Apple boxes.
Yeah, I'm not either. It is really funny though when
out of context a quote. I'm not ashamed of using Apple boxes. Anyway,
well, people try to do like a gotcha where they'll like take a picture of the analyst desk from behind and they'll be like, oh, I see you, and I'm like, yeah, I'm only 5 feet tall, guys.
Yeah, cool. Anyway.
But anyway, as a silhouette, that's actually what short shorts are doing, is they like make you look taller and they like kind of elongate your legs. So.
Very important. So now I learned that about it. Okay, here's another completely serious fashion trend currently, all right? So this one I need very important commentary on.
Oh my god. This is from yesterday.
Yeah.
My favorite thing about this was the screenshot of the is Fortnite overrated kids, and then like, these are those kids now. Do you feel old yet?
Nice. Yes.
I actually unironically love Perry's jacket. Like, I love a good like plaid like professor.
It's great. No
blazer. Yeah, it's pretty sick.
So is he winning the NACL Analyst House Fashion Show currently, or what's the deal?
I'd say so.
Okay,
yeah.
okay. I'm down
no
with
offense.
the Chad hat though. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I like the Chad hat. Yeah. This is an unflattering angle of him, which is unfortunate. He's like mid sentence.
This was the image that the NACL account tweeted out, so yeah.
But no, I really appreciated that he was rocking the hat. I thought both him and Perry looked really good.
Nice.
Honestly, they kind of outdressed Mazel, just saying.
So what are
Mazel, you're a little boring.
So what are your thoughts on the NACL dinner like a Sherlock Holmes jacket trend, you know, as the fashion trend sweeps the nation, as it were?
I'm a big fan,
nice.
You know? Like, I think Jat and Raz should wear more Sherlock Holmes jackets.
Nice. Okay.
I would find that endlessly entertaining.
Important things we learned. Sherlock Holmes jackets are excellent, and short shorts make you look taller. Anyway, continuing on. I hope you guys enjoyed that interlude. We are now going to talk about some gameplay stuff that happened this week. So that's the fashion trend break, transitioning us into the next segment. KT versus Damwon Kia, because absolutely we have to ask Emily about this whenever these teams play against each other.
So the first thing is, I'll say I was right. My prediction of this match was right. My prediction of this match was based on their absolute travesty of a best of 3 in season. Apparently, Jonas Strong, prediction guru, also got this one right. But no, it again, like, I think the big thing coming out of the series is that even as a KT fan, I was like, if KT win this, they're just gonna get dumpstered by Genji, right? And I think the same thing of DK. I think the big things in this match, I do not believe that DK as a whole can beat Genji at all.
But you believe that Lucid can beat Genji?
I feel like Lucid is fighting for his life, man, with the Tarzan rumors and stuff. It was hilarious to watch them save. How many times? They saved 4 out of 5, like, 5th picks for him.
Mm-hmm.
They R5 Lee Sin, they R5 Xin, they R5 Nocturne, which was like, we're running the same thing, but now with less jungle pressure, which is very confusing. And a choice. And then they B5 Jax, and then their best draft was the one time that they didn't save counter pick for Lucid, in my opinion.
R5 jungle is very good, especially when you're picking Lee Sin, Xin Zhao, which are usually 1-2 picks in general.
Yeah, I was like very confused. Yeah. I was like, you already see. Yeah. Anyway, the drafting in the series was very sus until game. I thought I really liked DK's game 5 draft. I thought it was really smart. The Nico flex to support picking the Sylas once you see all of the insane ultimates you can steal from KT's comp. Sylas is like a showmaker classic, and I think in this game, which was the most convincing one for either team in the series, I thought you could see like this is why. Like obviously, I feel like people probably still think of LeBlanc, they'll think of Kassadin as like showmaker picks, but I also think Sylas is a pick that he is like excelled on and just been able to control games by roaming to sides. I think it is a pick that allows him to showcase just how much he knows about the game as an individual and how well he can read the map. And I do think we saw that in the 5th game, which was really nice to see, even as they were destroying my team. I think another thing is that Lucid played surprisingly well. Again, I disagree with the fact that they had to save 5th pick for him so often, but I did like seeing him on. Yeah, I did like seeing him on things like the Jax, obviously Lee Sin, Xin Zhao. I think these are things that he's going to be more comfortable and confident with than the Rel Sejuani that they kind of, I don't even want to say we're forcing him on, but like DK seemed very committed in a lot of their games to like either playing meta or 1-for-1 copying comps that they lost against. They'd be like, we lost against this, now we must learn to play it, and then didn't play it correctly or build it correctly or whatever. So I don't think they have a chance against Genji, but I did like seeing Lucid kind of be able to do his thing a little bit more reminiscent of why people were so hyped on him as a jungler coming up from LCK Challengers. I feel like we've only seen a few peaks at that throughout the split. This was one of the, if people were around last week, DK was one of the teams where I was like, please try at least one time to run a comp like FPX and play around your jungler like that, because I feel like it could theoretically work with Lucid. That's not necessarily what they did with these team comps, but I did think that he looked a lot more comfortable on these picks than some of the other things he played in season. So going forward, I think the big thing though is DK are so inconsistent, and their understanding of how to draft and pilot a lot of these compositions has been very suspect all year. And I don't see them being able to beat Genji in a best of 5 at all. We can clip this for next week if it happens.
I'm ready. Yeah. I'm ready because I think 5-pick Lucid is the secret weapon against Peanut.
You do?
Yeah.
Even when it
yeah, even if it's just Lee
against Canyon, you mean?
Oh yeah, excuse me, yeah, Canyon. Sorry, my bad. Yeah, for some reason, yes, Peanut is no longer on Genji. I am aware of this fact. Thank you, chat. But just preemptively.
Is chat calling you out?
No, they won't yet because it's a 10-second delay. So I'm preemptively saying thank you, chat. But the yeah, so like I think that's the secret weapon against Genji is a 5-pick Lucid Lee Sin for sure. They will never see it coming. That's a joke, by the way. I do expect
they will definitely see it coming after this.
I do expect a Genji to win that one, but I don't know. We'll see. I think it'll be interesting for sure, because I think it's like the Showmaker Chovy storyline is always so fun, because it's like at this point Showmaker has been through the like hyperbolic time chamber where he's just like had to train with training weights on like 1000x gravity for so long, you know, and that's basically what this DK experience has been like. So even if the matchup doesn't really deliver, I think it'll be very interesting to just kind of see like the evolution of the mid matchup. I think it'll be super fun. So, and of course, like
I would love
Showmaker calling out Canyon. So, if nothing
yeah,
else,
that was cute.
It's definitely like a cool storyline matchup, even if it's not like gonna be super. I don't know if even if it is super one sided in the end, you know. So
yeah. I just want DK to play like I want them to go like full. And obviously, IG also lost with this, but like, you know how they brought in Tianjin just literally to play that Rengar game?
Yeah.
I was surprised they didn't sub him out for game 2.
Yeah.
But like the idea, that was the more surprising thing. But like since he was announced starting, I was like, okay, they're just gonna play pure comfort across the board. And that's what they did. And it's still lost because IG are not that good. But I think
I expected that, but yeah.
the cool thing, I was messaging you during that game one. I was like, okay, whatever. We're just full sending it. But like I appreciate that, right? Like especially if you are DK.
All split, yeah. So
yeah. If you are DK and you're looking at, in my opinion, a pretty insurmountable enemy in Gen G, like just play stuff that you guys are comfortable with. Obviously within reason, because like I think if you're slamming Kassadin, you probably have to pay attention to the rest of your draft so you have some point of pressure, or so Kassadin has a good lane matchup or whatever. I'm using that again because it's one of Showmaker's like big champs. But I'd love to see them do something like IG, kind of like what Kwangdong did against HLE, where they just were kind of playing things that they either thought were really strong or that they were really comfortable. They wanted to be comfortable on. I mean, I'm not sold on the Bull Draven, but apparently he is. So yeah, I like kind of want them to abandon the blueprint that they've been using for most of the split, which is playing towards a more standard meta style that Gen G have perfected, right? Because if you just lock in something that's like super standard against Gen G, who already plays that stuff way better than you, it's going to be a quick 3-0. So I want to see DK yeet out some interesting picks. I want to see them play a composition that might be a little wacky that plays to their strengths, because I think that would be how they would like take games off of Gen G at all.
So basically you're saying you want Lian to sub in
for Lucid. No.
For DK.
And then just comes in, slams in Italy. We're winning, boys.
And you want
until we're not.
You want Coach Long to appear on stage as well.
Oh god.
It always just makes me laugh when I see Long coaching on stage, because I remember him on Unlimited Potential as the top laner.
Man,
what a Chad. Anyway,
those were the days.
Yes, good times. Anyway,
I'm talking about DK like they're an NA team at Worlds.
Yeah, Kingen, Acel, Lucid, Belveth, Showmaker, Kassadin, Aiming, Smolder.
I want to say that team gets absolutely dominated in the early game.
That would be terrible. I mean, Belveth would have to like legit 1v5, because Belveth is only good in the early game, and everyone else.
And everything else is like, at the very least, you're probably losing mid and bot. Belveth has no cover to invade. Anyway,
that's amazing. She was a bulldozer.
That is a cursed composition you came up with.
Yes. We're winning, boys. Things only ever said before losing. Anyway, before we close out, I do want to talk a little bit about the G2 Fnatic discourse, because this is definitely one of those things where it's like, all right, Fnatic's done a bit better the splits. G2, we've talked about them on the show already, having like kind of a rough split, having an early game that it's like other teams are suddenly punishing them for their early game, and then suddenly the series that happened yesterday, which was Caps picks Acel, gets like 7 kills, and ends team fights and still somehow wins. So I mean, there were definitely some interesting attempts in the series, like they went with the Ash Rumble bot, right? There were definitely like some okay looks out of Fnatic, but it just felt like it feels like there's this weird level of like European plot armor where in a way teams are trying to sabotage them by just like playing badly specifically against G2 so that G2 never improve. This is a terrible joke.
They're destroying G2's chances internationally by purposely playing poorly.
We played bad on purpose as a joke. Anyway, continue.
Yeah. I think game 1,
yeah, was
the watershed moment for me was at I think like 8 minutes and 30 seconds where they see like Fnatic should be able to see where they are in river, but they kind of decide to contest them anyway. And G2 just collapses, and that was the first big like Caps ASOL ultimate on bot side. And after that, I was like, oh, okay, G2 are just going to take it from here. The biggest difference, I think, in these games was that, like, there were moments, especially early, and like you and I have been critical of G2's early game. I feel like a lot of people have. There were moments like in game 1, not as much in game 2, in my opinion, where it did look like, okay, Fnatic very obviously have windows into this game. And even like there's a play on bot side where they they kill Corki, and then there's like a split call whether they want to hide in jungle and do Drake, or they thought like they somehow wouldn't die if they only had 2 people in jungle, but they do die and Corki comes back in time. But Fnatic just like G2 basically end up getting away with so much off of that play despite not playing it well at all. That it's basically like they go Drake, it goes into them taking Herald, they push mid with Herald, and then the game is over. And it's like, wow. I think that specifically the game 2 ending kind of sticks in people's minds as like,
yeah,
Fnatic are so bad that G2 just absolutely slammed them, right? And I don't even think it's necessarily like, obviously a lot of it is G2 just felt comfortable enough that they could do that at the very end in like the what you I guess you would call the like game winning fight as they're pushing Herald onto inhib turret, I believe. Humanoid is still in top lane and he essentially has to like path down, but by the time he paths down, they're already fighting, and Broken Blade just immediately turns on him and he dies. And as Corki, he is just a lot of damage for that team. It's just, yeah, it's particularly frustrating from someone. I'm talking about myself here. I'm sure a lot of people feel this way though, because they've addressed it even on the LEC broadcast. You really want this team, this G2 team, to be able to do well because they have sometimes such really brilliant runs of play. They're like, wow, this team can be so smart. And then for Fnatic, I think as a team, they have looked a lot better. So you do want teams to be able to also contest G2 because, to your point, if they don't, then they don't get as good practice as they could have before presumably going to boot camp before MSI, depending on where they end up in the bracket. So it's like, yeah, I don't know. That particular run of play though, where they like go onto Humanoid around like bot tier 2 was really tilting to me because they just die in jungle for no reason afterwards. And I was like, that kind of negates everything you just
Yeah, I mean, I think
they just did, and then they like close out the game within the next like 2 minutes anyway, I think.
I can't remember if it was the first or the second game either, but there was one game where they were punishing bot lane, and then they did this very weird swap and just gave like 2 free waves when they had been doing a punish as well. And so it was like, all right, I guess we're just not committing to snowballing our leads. I don't like. For me, the thing that's interesting is like the discourse that Fnatic are playing just like worse than normal versus G2, right? I don't know if that's necessarily true. I do think that G2, when they do see a mistake, and like especially in a map rotation, I think G2 don't always capitalize immediately on like a teamfight mistake or things like this. But if there's a mistake in a map rotation, they are always on that like really fast. So it exacerbates how bad the mistakes look for sure. So I think that that's also something that'll come out a lot. So anyway, good stuff on that. For the record, I'm okay with G2 looking like cheeks. Thank you, Matt Scoot. Thank you. I appreciate it. But I guess for me, like,
hey, said the jungler he wants to most face is Yike, which I thought was an interesting. Yeah.
Well, he said that because he's like not interested in LCK junglers, right? That he's played against like the LCK junglers a lot. I assume that he's also scrimmed against like some LPL teams, or he just like doesn't rate LPL, so who knows. But
no, he said specifically it's because he's So initially he actually like unofficially began his career in China where he was playing for like an amateur team. But then while he was in Korea, they scrimmed constantly with LPL teams. They did, and so I think he was like, I faced this jungler so many times and it was not good. It's not good.
This is a great transition to talk about who is going to make MSI from each region. So we already know NA, right? And since we're North Americans and therefore very self-centered, we're like, why aren't the other leagues already over? Why don't we already know our opponents? This is very boring, and we want it to go faster, so we're going to make the predictions now. Who are we going to play against at MSI?
So I said, if anyone's looked at my brackets, I actually picked BLG and TES to go. I'm risking the fact that JDG, BLG just seem inevitable regardless. Yagao versus Knight, regardless. I am destroying that narrative with my picks. But yeah, so I have BLG, TES, I have T1 Gen G. Europe is weird as fuck because if I'm looking at gameplay, I would say G2 Fnatic. If I'm looking at the way it might actually work out with championship points, as far as I know, with their win today,
MDK,
MDK have 155 championship points.
I mean, Fnatic still have a decent amount, no? So
I think they do. They just have less. Yeah. I just know that European fans, if MDK ends up going over like Fnatic, they're going to lose their minds again with the championship point system. Yes. I mean, I like MDK for the same reasons that you do, because it's like the group of challenger players that could, in a way. But yeah, so right now they have 155 points. Fnatic has 115. Because they're both right now currently qualified for top 6 at least. G2 has already qualified. Again, if I'm going by gameplay, I think it's probably Fnatic, which would, I think, require them to make finals as long as MDK don't make third.
I mean, BDS are actually more of a threat, I think, than Fnatic right now in terms of championship points, because BDS are guaranteed.
Oh yeah, they are. They have 80,
55, and they have 80 from Winter.
Yeah.
So I think it's like a larger threat in terms of BDS, and if you're looking purely at like the current bracket, right? It's like,
oh yeah, wait, they have 90.
Because they have a total of like 135. So at the moment.
They're actually guaranteed more because they're in the upper bracket.
Yeah.
It's according to Leaguepedia anyway. It says they're guaranteed at least 175 because they're already at 95 for spring.
And
yeah.
Fnatic are already lower bracket, and MDK are already lower bracket, right? So there's like a legitimate concern that it would be BDS. I think Vit had a very interesting series against BDS in my opinion. So I think that like I'm not super sold on BDS yet. But I think it'll be like I think that has like a more interesting early game than BDS. So I don't know. I think Europe can be very interesting to see who goes. I think like the default expectation is that it's going to be Fnatic. I think Team Heretics probably won't make it based on today's series. I wonder. I think probably the most interesting series coming up is the NDK series because that'll give us like a better impression in terms of like whether either of those teams are actually a threat. I think BDS will naturally get knocked down, and then I think it should be between like I want to say it's between like Bit Fnatic BDS as to who's gonna go, but we'll see.
Yeah. Actually, wow, that Vitality MDK match is going to be super interesting because Vitality's early game is pretty consistently good. And I think MDK kind of throw themselves against a wall sometimes early, even when they don't have compositions that they should be fighting with.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that they're like there's a legitimate danger of them going. I think that MDK are still demonstrating that they have a good ceiling, and I think they'll be a bigger. I think they'll still be a pretty good threat in summer, for Europe. But I don't think they have like a realistic chance of going MSI at this point. But we'll see. Maybe they do. Maybe they do. But I think it's more likely to be one of the other two teams. I think.
BDS, Fnatic,
For me, I find Vit very interesting. I think it would be cool to see them go to MSI. I like watching Vit games. But it's probably either BDS or Fnatic would be my guess.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's it for us today. I think Emily has to
I do
get out.
I gotta peace out.
I will be again co-streaming LNG Weibo, which I don't know. I dread watching LNG series personally. That's just the me thing. But so I'll see.
Same.
So I'll see you later tonight, chat.
Maybe I'll hop on stream one of these nights.
You're probably not. If you dread watching LNG games, you're probably not gonna hop on for LNG. So, but